Welcome to Veteran State of Mind. I'm your host, Geraint Jones. Welcome back to the podcast. Before we get into it, let's say thank you to our sponsors. Combat Fuel, they make a wide range of supplements, sports supplements, and also supplements for productivity, like their new range of Optimize. Comes in a few flavors. Think of it as a pre-workout for your day. Will get you switched on and firing. If you're serving in the military, everything they've got is all informed sports squared away, so you won't be failing any CDTs or anything like that. If you want to check them out, they're linked up in the show notes at Combat Fuel on social media. And if you use the code VSOM at checkout, you'll get some juicy discount for your juicy gains. Also want to say massive thank you to Zulu Alpha Straps. If you've got a watch, you need a strap for it. I have genuinely broken a lot of straps on my watches in the past. Don't know what I'm doing with myself, to be honest, but I've never broken a Zulu Alpha one. They're very hardworking, just like me, and they come in a variety of different patterns, and they look very nice. I'll just say that. They look really nice. So check them out at Zulu Alpha Straps, also linked up down in the show notes. Both of these companies are veteran-owned, veteran-operated, and they support the podcast. So if you enjoy the podcast, please support them because it wouldn't happen without them. I also want to say a big thank you to me, Geraint Jones, for sponsoring today's podcast. I've written a book with Leveson Wood. It's called Escape from Kabul. It's about the events during the fall of Kabul in August 2021. We had first-hand interviews from everyone from private soldiers holding the riot shields to the Afghans escaping the country, the defense minister, the foreign secretary. We got all kinds in there. So I wouldn't say... Obviously, this is something, we do consider kind of military history, but at the same time, even if military history isn't really a thing, and to be honest, you probably wouldn't be listening to the podcast if it wasn't, I think there's something in there for everyone because it's really a human story at the end of the day. We were really lucky to have all the interviews that we did, and if you're listening, you contributed to it. Thank you so much for that. We've got American interviews in there too. All like different branches of the British military. So that's linked down in the show notes too. That's Escape from Kabul. All right, let me introduce today's guest. Lauren Ungeldi is a best-selling author, speaker, CEO of IKAR Global, and human rights advocate. Lauren has collaboratively, sorry, that's a big word for me, collaboratively written 8 books, which have been featured on a variety of prominent media outlets and top numerous bestseller charts. She works with well-known politicians, thought leaders, war heroes, and famous media figures to bring true stories of extraordinary human triumph to global audiences. She's a great guest. Really enjoyed our conversation. You'll know her from Jeff Morris's book, Legion Rising. And we had Jeff on the podcast a while ago. Great guy with a great book. And Lauren was obviously a big part of that. So we talk about that and a lot more. So without further ado, please give a very warm welcome to Lauren Ungeldi. Lauren, welcome to the podcast. It's been a while since we've been planning it. I'm glad we could finally get together. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Coming from Istanbul, Turkey?
Indeed, I am. Istanbul, Turkey. I love it here.
But the accent is definitely not Turkish.
I'm a Texas girl, actually, but I've dropped most of my Southern accent during my time spent traveling the world. But I was born and raised in Texas, did a bit of traveling, and now I split my time between Texas and Istanbul. I have a house both places, and so I can pull out a good Southern girl accent if you'd like, but that might get funny for the rest of the interview, so we'll stick with this.
I feel like we have a disproportionate amount of Texans on the show, especially with,
really?
I think like so many. I think it's like a really big state in terms of recruiting for the military and that kind of thing. So
sure.
So we definitely had quite a few on like that. So the guest we're recording with tomorrow, he isn't actually a Texan, but he's I would say he lives in Austin now. He's one of those, went from California to Austin. But let's talk about first of all, let's talk about Legion Rising.
Yeah,
because we had Jeff on the podcast, and obviously you work with Jeff on the book. So how did you how did you go from you weren't in the military yourself, right?
I was not.
So how did you kind of go into this world of writing books which are focused around not just military events, but kind of events in the in that kind of sphere? Because the books that you do, I know you write a wide range of things, but There's definitely seems to be a thread in them of like the conflict thread. So how was that something that you got drawn into?
That's an interesting question. And I get asked a lot because if you look at me and you look at, say, Jeff Morris, who was my co-author for my first book, as you mentioned, Legion Rising, it looks like an unlikely pairing. It's okay. This is interesting. This is a writer, or a good writer, but she's never served in the military. And yet, not only Jeff's book, but I've gone on to write ones with Navy SEALs. I've gone on to write ones with, Air Force pilots. And there seems to be a theme here, as you said, of conflict, of war, of military base. So with Jeff and I, it was actually, he was coming to do a speaking engagement to a big CrossFit event that was in my hometown. And someone said, we need to write a really good article for publicity before the event gets started. I have a great writer I can refer you to. And someone just out of the blue emailed me, said, can you, have a phone call with Jeff? Can you write a short piece for publicity for him? And I had not written a full-length book at the time. I had done mostly short work. I talked with Jeff on the phone for probably 45 minutes. He told me kind of his life story crash course, the elevator pitch, version of his story. I turned around, I wrote something for him. The event went quite well. And then a few weeks later, I just get a message and he said, Lauren, I have had a lot of writers ask me to do my story. I've considered writing a book for a long time, but in 45 minutes, you had the ability to hear what I said and get inside my mind. And you translated my voice to the page in a way that was really authentic, in a way that I felt like you got more than what I could say. You were able to get what I was trying to say, and you put that into words. What would you think about doing a full-length book? And actually, it's been something I've been wanting to do for quite some time. And so I said, Jeff, let's do it. Let's go for it there. And so that set a journey off with him that was a wonderful journey. But his story is not just about, being in the military, but really centers around trauma in combat and how to deal with that and coming back. And one of his things that he dealt with was not just the trauma of war, but also, as he would say, there's this almost addiction to combat and the high that it gives you, the clarity of mind that it gives you. And it's difficult to find that anywhere else in life. And so, and he believes that trauma is not, of course, and PTSD is not just about military. And so he does a lot of speaking and engages people maybe who've been sexually victimized or have had other sorts of trauma. And so after that book, I have had a steady stream of either co-authoring or ghostwriting projects that I have done. I've written 8 books so far, and I've just steadily had those, and quite a few of those have continued to be in the military space. At first, I thought, maybe the fact that, when I first went to publishing, one of the publishers said, Lauren, maybe instead of putting your name as Lauren on the first title, why don't you just put your initials LC so that it will appear as though maybe you could be a man? In the publisher's words, a woman, it's hard for an audience to receive a book written about war that's written by a woman. Women can't write as well about serious topics, is how he put it. And that was quite surprising to me that, this day and time we're fighting those kind of things. And I actually talked to Jeff and I said, look, Jeff, I want your book to do well, your story to do well. This is not my time to take a stand as a feminist. This is really about you and your book. And if you feel that it would be better for you to do it, and even a very well-known author told Jeff, cut Lauren's name off the credit front and just put mine in her place. I'm happy to take credit for her work. She's a great writer. The book will sell a lot more copies. But wow. Jeff is great. He said, not in your life. He said, I don't want your name. I want your name on the front, and I want your damn face on the front. That's how he said it to me. He said, I want your damn face on the front. And so he said, we are going to do this. And so after that, interestingly, the response was excellent. They said, Lauren, because you did not come in the way that maybe a military person has, you're able to notice the extraordinary parts of the story and also bring this to readers that, maybe haven't been into the military, that there's a way that you're able to, through the writing, make it appeal to, those that love, the military-based books, but then also to a broader readership base. So an unlikely pairing, but I think in the long run, it's added a different element to the writing process that was quite good.
Yeah, I back that up, like the agents that I work with, editors, etc. are all civilians and always have great inputs because, you know, something that's in the military that you might just think is sort of something just like run of the mill because everyone does it, like might be extraordinary to somebody else. And I think as well, sometimes you need somebody, I think maybe there's a thing of sometimes if veterans working with other veterans, you might not want to admit certain things. You know, I think it can help to bring things out of people. So what was your kind of like, what was your process like for working with Jeff to do this book? 'Cause I'm sure a lot of people listening are probably thinking about doing a book themselves, want to get their own story out, and probably quite interested to know how it works to work with either a ghostwriter or a co-writer or a co-author, whatever you know, different kind of levels of credit. Like, so just to explain to people, a ghostwriter is your name isn't anywhere. A co-writer is like a kind of credit, and a co-author is really kind of a bit more of a recognition of like a full kind of partnership. So, you know, for you working on this first book, how did you approach it? And then how has that changed over time? Like, how have you refined that process? What works for you now?
Yeah. So for me, the biggest thing is that, you know, it's not just, there are, let's say, services that you can get now in which you talk to a microphone, they dictate it, and then they write it down, and they say, okay, this is a book. For me, and I think you would probably back this up as an author yourself, to be a true writer is to help get into the mind of someone, look at their mindset, their story, the scope of it, and then you're actually you're creating a literary voice for them. You are making something that is authentic to their personality. You are creating who they become as a literary voice on the page. I love to do that. And it's interesting for me to be able to adapt it, change it slightly to person I work with. The first one, Jeff's book, I said, we're going to take this journey together. I took my time a little bit more. The first book takes longer. I think it was 10 months that it took me to complete the full manuscript. Now, 3-4 months, I can have a manuscript finished if it's my sole project. It's kind of like running or exercising. At first, everything gets you out of breath. You feel your muscles are sore. You feel like you did this big thing. You wrote one chapter in a week, and then you get to a certain point in your writing career, you can write 10,000 words in a day, and you're thinking like, okay, good day's work. So in that regard, as it's changed, the very beginning, it was difficult. It felt like a very long process. I put my heart and soul into your creative work. It goes off to the editor. You're thinking, are they going to like it? Are they not going to like it? You ride the ups and downs of the publishing process a lot and that kind of thing. And it's not my heart and soul is in my work still, of course, but you learn to not go up and down so much with the publishing process. You get faster at the writing. You learn how to interview people effectively. So typically what I do is I require that I've spent 48 hours to 72 hours in person with the person doing very intense interviews over the course of a day or two. So I'll usually fly to their location. We go, sit in a neutral space that's calm. We have plenty of food around. Some people like to drink alcohol while they're doing the interview process, especially if it's dealing with trauma. Some people, that is their way to, let's say, become more open-minded. Whatever's fine with me. I sit with them. I have questions. And what I want them to do is I want them to give me the scope of the story. So I tell them, vomit out everything. I said, just word vomit on me. It doesn't need to be pretty. It doesn't need to sound like you want it to sound to the world. I just want you to tell me from the depths of your soul. I want you to start at the beginning and tell me everything. Even you can tell me stuff you don't want in the book. And I find that most people, if they're going to tell you their life story, I know a lot of people's secrets, to be honest. Sometimes they're telling me stuff about their sex life. Sometimes they're telling me about a really bad breakup they had. Sometimes they're telling me about, a mistake they made that they wish they hadn't. And I've even heard some mistakes that have to do with combat situations in which they really feel some guilt for something that didn't go down well. I've had other scenarios in which they tell me, they say, hey, I'm going to take the public fall for this story. I'm going to say I made a mistake, but it's actually a guy under me who was serving with me did this and someone died because of it. But publicly, this is not the story. And this needs to stay between us. I have heard stories about off-book assassinations that took place that were not, let's say, signed off by anyone in a official capacity. This is where there's almost this client's a client, with a therapist or something, you have some confidentiality. It's the same with my work because I need to know what frame of mind you're in. I need to know what's going on with you. And it helps and informs me of how to become your voice, your mind, to read between the lines of what you're saying to me and then what you're trying to say to me. Because people tell their story, but there is mostly what I'm writing from is the things that they don't know how to put into words, especially if you're dealing with some very serious and difficult situations. And I saw this with Jess. I'm watching head camera footage that he has. I'm seeing pictures that he has. And there's some pictures that I'm looking at body parts and I can't tell what I'm looking at, to be honest, because there's some really messed up imagery there. And so I learned through that to capture his story with authenticity, I had to really get into that mindset. And I felt it deeply. I felt it when I'm talking to the moms and the sisters of men that had passed away and died in the line of duty. And I felt the weight of that. But it's an important part of what I do. I see it as a distinct honor to be entrusted with someone's legacy, to be entrusted with someone's story. And the pressure I place upon myself to do it justice, to become their voice with authenticity is very important to me. And I take it very seriously. So we start with that 72 hours, let's say. We go through the scope of the story, they word vomit. You take 1 to 2 weeks. I create an outline for myself where I know what I'm looking for each part of the content. And then I begin to guide them through the process. Usually we have an interview, we record it. It's over Zoom or phone call once a week or once every 2 weeks, generally. And those interviews will last maybe 2.5 hours. And I'm leading them and guiding them through a specific part of the content. Some people like for me to prep them beforehand with a whole list of questions, and they like to prepare for several days for it. And then a majority of people actually like to go off the cuff. They just want to say whatever comes up to them as I'm asking them. And usually I get pretty good content based upon that. Then I tell them, especially I'm there to create a very close relationship with them because that's the best way I get my content. I get what I get in the 2 hours, but if you're dealing with, let's say, combat stories, especially if there's any element of trauma that's happened there, I find that you're only getting a certain amount within that amount of time. Typically 2 hours later to 2 days later is when the real stuff comes in. That's when they've had a couple of drinks later at night. They have had time to think and process. Then the feelings are coming up. Then, Laura, there was more to that story I didn't say on the interview. And so that's why when I work with clients, I say, my inbox is open at any time, any point of the day. You can write to me anything. It's like your open journal. I will read it when I have time. I will read it during my business hours. And some of my very best content, the very deepest parts of the story typically come actually outside the interview. And they're able to share the things that are coming up later. So in that way, I have to create a safe zone for all content to come out at any point in time because you can't control when the human wants to really give you what they want to give you. So we do in-person interviews throughout the weeks. And then as far as the timetable goes, it could go anywhere from 4 months to 12 months is typically the timeline. I can get it done in 3 to 4 months, but if the person has not walked through their entire life story, and if there's any elements that are very difficult or any trauma attached, it's intense to do in 4 months because every week they're going through something and I'm just poking and pressing. There's no relief. So I typically suggest more like 6 to 10 months for really difficult stories. Just actually for the person, it's easier for them to have a bit of time to do it. And so then there's rough draft manuscript. They read over it and then they say, Lauren, it was brown and not blue, or small details we change after that. And, it's on to publishing.
Have you ever had a job that comes up? Because one of the things I do find myself is, I'm sure you've been in the same position. You always end up being friends with these people that you work with because you spend so much time sharing stories as well. Because one of the best ways to get somebody to trust you is to open up something about yourself as well, to show that, you're human. So, and I do think you develop kind of, friendships, which is one of the great things about the job, because usually these really interesting people. But have you ever had any job that you've kind of come across, not necessarily like a personality clash, but have you been offered something before and you've kind of looked at it and gone, either I don't think I can tell this story or I don't think I want to be the person to tell this story?
Oh, 100%. I guess I turned down quite a few jobs, and maybe for a different reason. One, if I cannot find a passion for something, if I can't find something in me that can create some relatability to the story. So maybe I haven't been through exactly what this person has been through, but if I can pull from some time, it is similar to acting, I would say. And to be a co-author, ghostwriter is almost like going into a character and then writing as if you are that character. And so it's a two-part thing. If I can't find anything that I relate to about the subject matter, if I can't find any passion, I really don't try to take the job. I've done one or two that were just about content, and that was earlier on in my career and more just for the sake that I took the contract. It was great as a job, financially.
Yeah.
But some personality types, yes, if I can tell I'm not going to get along. There was one person that wanted me to write a book, and we were scheduled for a 30-minute call. And 4 hours later, I was about to hang up on the guy. I could not get off the phone. I said, I appreciate our talk. I'm glad that, we had this time, but let's pick this up another time. He continued to talk. I tried it again 30 minutes later. I missed 2 meetings. It was 4 hours. And I thought, this isn't an individual, very socially unaware. So I've had a couple of those. Only one book that I did complete. There was one, and I'm not going to say a lot about it, but it was a complete ghostwriting project. And the person came quite unprepared with content. It was very difficult to work with, had a lot of mood swings up and down. And the content was not heavy. It wasn't hard. We weren't dealing with trauma, but it was just not a great one. And I kind of knew it on the front end, to be honest, but I took it anyway. And I thought, Lauren, I'm never going to do 10 months again with this kind of thing. And they're grocery shopping while they're doing interviews with me. And I'm thinking, you're paying me this much for me to write your book. And they're just assuming that it means they're putting their name on it, and I'm coming up and generating all the content, which I'm really looking to take you and put it into a literary voice to create with you, to collaborate with you. And it's a lengthy process. And so I learned after that to ask some questions. And if someone's not invested, even if they are willing to finance the project, I need for them to be emotionally and mentally with it. Otherwise, it's a very frustrating process to do together. And I mean, like you said, you're going to be lifelong friends with this person. You're going to partner with them very closely for 10 months. It's kind of like getting married. You got to have some synergy with the person. Otherwise, it's not a good guy. Not a good fit. Yeah,
I agree with what you said earlier as well. I'd agree that at the beginning, I definitely felt that, like you said, that emotional roller coaster more. I had a job offer once, and it was a book about a guy who'd been breaking up child sex rings in Thailand and stuff. Oof. And I really wanted to do. He was a great guy. This guy's a hero, right, in my eyes. And I really wanted to do it, but I was like, I don't think I don't know how he does his job, but I was like, I think this book is going to fuck me up, working on this. And I think now, 6 years later, I think I'd be able to do it. But at the time, I could do that. And I think that's important because there is a certain amount of, I don't want to say desperation, but when you are getting into writing, there is this temptation to just grab whatever's offered to you.
Yeah.
And I think people should avoid that because it might put you off the job. It might give you an experience that really kind of taints the whole writing thing for you. So I think that's important. And the other thing I think is important, what you're talking about as well, is voice. I'm sure you're the same way. I could pick up a book that's being written or co-written, and I can know straight away, sometimes, because a lot of books, people won't know this, or some people won't. A lot of these books that you think have been written by celebrities or personalities, they've had a ghostwriter. And in this day and age of people being on TV, on podcasts, etc., it's very easy to hear what someone's voice is. And then you read the first page of the book and then go, this person hasn't been within 100 miles of this fucking book.
Right. Yeah.
It's, I don't like the Prince Harry book. And look, I'm sure that ghostwriter is a great ghostwriter. I mean, he got paid £2 million for it, but I was just reading it and I thought, this doesn't sound like how he sounded every other time I've heard his interviews. And then I would have been really interested in reading the book, but it just felt to me like he hardly had any involvement in it. And I want to know that there's that involvement, and that voice, is really kind of important. And having talked to Jeff, I think, and this is why I messaged you at the time, I thought you'd nailed it because it read like Jeff.
Yeah.
And people might go, well, that's a given, but that's the skill. That's a skill.
Yeah, that's the thing. And another one I ghosted was actually for a Navy SEAL. And this guy has such a crude military sense of humor. I probably listened to 40 hours of him doing different interviews, and he uses the fuck word as a verb, as a noun, as an adjective. He is that, your ass fucker, this, that, I mean, it's a different thing. If you look at me, I don't talk like this actually, but I learned to channel a different sense of humor, and I had a fun time writing that book, to be honest, because his voice was so self-assured. His voice was so powerful, and I was able to inject humor in a very dark way, a very sexually inappropriate way. And it was fun. It was great. I had a good time doing it. And it was very different. But even I was working with a younger writer, asked for me to give her some work that she could just do like some editing. Can I edit something and you give me some feedback on it? And, it was for the current book I'm working on for BBI Aisha, who was on the cover of Time magazine, young Afghani girl, 12, sold to the Taliban. When she, in marriage, forced marriage, she lives with the Taliban 5 years, a very, very abusive situation. She tries to escape, and then they cut off her ears and nose in punishment for trying to escape. And she ended up on an American military base. She has a wonderful story. But, I gave a couple of chapters to this editor to work with, and the editor changed all these very simple words and began to use these massive adjectives that are wonderful use of the dictionary, let's say. But, this is advantageous. This was, this and that. And I told her later, I said, if you're working as a ghostwriter, I said that we're talking right now, this part of the story, this is a young Afghani girl who has never been to school, who's living in the mountains and who is 11 years old, Afghani girl who has never had the privilege of a formal education. And we're telling it first person from her voice. When you're putting in all of these massive words, while I appreciate it as a writer, it takes immediately as the reader, then you're aware of the presence of a ghostwriter here, because it's obvious she's not speaking this way at the time. And still, even as English is a second language and the vocabulary is extraordinary now in comparison, she's not using advantageous in the middle of the sentence. It's distracting. And so like you said before, it takes a lot of forethought. The end result should be effortless, that the reader doesn't even think about it and say, oh, that sounds like that person. But it does take a lot of forethought to create a literary voice that's authentic to the speaker.
So when you did Jeff's book, the military is obviously, Jeff's American, you're an American, but the military is a culture of its own. Did doing that help you to then write stories? Because you've done something that a lot of people, will do ghostwriting, but not kind of cross international, borders. And you've done a lot of things with people from different cultures. How has that been in terms of challenge, and how have you adapted to those challenges?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So my first several books were for Americans. I did one with Jeff. I did one for a Navy SEAL. I did one for actually one that was centered just around mental health and drug recovery from a guy who had fired a gun at his skull. The gun misfired once. He really dealt with a very intense cocaine addiction, and it was about his story of recovery. And that one was a lot about mental health. But then my last two books have been for, non-Native Americans. I wrote the story, the declassified story of Saddam Hussein's private pilot, and his story is incredible, extraordinary. His brother was actually died when the Iranians bombed him out of a plane in the sky. His brother died. He flew into sandstorms under death threat with Saddam Hussein's brother. He landed in Somalia in the middle of a military coup. Some crazy stories. But the mindset is quite different. The military mindset is quite different, and things that you take for granted because you're coming at it with an American perspective. It's very important to see it differently. And then, of course, the current book I'm working on for BBI Aisha, she comes from Afghanistan. Also, mindset is very different. I would say it benefited me that I had traveled extensively. And so I'd had the chance not just go a week and dip my toe in the ocean in a resort and then say like, hey, I've been to such and such country, but actually really live there with the locals and the people. I think especially Americans have the tendency to see everything through an American lens and to assume that everyone has the same programming of this in a quite idealistic mentality. And I think it takes time, and I feel that it's important, and I try to encourage any of my American friends, if they can't travel, or if they can't travel, at least expose themselves to maybe authors with a different mindset or filmmakers with a different mindset, because there's a different infrastructure of, what you fear, what you want, what your goals are, how you see the world when you have not been born in America. And I think it's very important to take time to open the mind, see things from a different perspective. So working with non-Native Americans definitely challenged me as a writer to write still with authenticity. And I'd write some sentences and then I would think that would work if I'm working with a Marine, but this isn't the same kind of mindset here. And so it takes time, it takes research, it takes needing to learn a lot and to not just, make any assumptions. And so as a writer, it's challenging, but I do love it so much. And I love the ability to, channel a voice and authentically be their voice, but then also be able to create something that is very relatable for especially a Western mindset reader and audience base. So I can kind of bring the two together in a way that works well. But it's challenging, but I like it.
So when did BB come over to the States? Was it during the evacuation from Kabul, or was it before that?
No. So, BB, she was sold by her father as a peace offering at 12. She lived with the Taliban, and some really tough stories about that. The systematic abuse was really rough. For me, some of the hardest stories had to do with they were bringing in orphan children and the things the men were doing to the orphan children. And it's a lot of rough sexual abuse, a lot of really tough things. She lived a lot of really tough things. A lot of children lived in that area. She tried to escape. Two women helped her to escape and then attempted to sell her into a sex trafficking ring in Pakistan rather than putting her on a bus to get back to her grandparents. She lived in a prison for 5 months. And there was a lot of forced heroin addiction happening in that prison because that's the way that they were using the prisoners in a sexual capacity, but there's a lot of forced heroin addiction. Then the Taliban leader, who's her father-in-law, came back, got her out of prison, brought her back. 1 week pretends to be very nice. She meets her husband for the first time after 4 years. He had been living in Pakistan the entire time they were married. And then, during Ramazan, it's pronounced differently, different areas of the world. He just suddenly pulls her by her feet up a mountain. And, for her running away, he meets with another group of Taliban and he says, she ran away and she's married. What can we do to her? And they said, did she run away to a man? If she did, you can kill her. Jesus. If she didn't run away to a man, then you can cut off her ears and nose. So her husband grabs a machete, cuts her hair off first, and then slices both of her ears and nose. And the last thing she remembers hearing is he's just over top of her. You're ashamed to the woman's name, and no one will ever want you again. And then everything goes black because she said everything was just cold at that point. She didn't feel any more pain after the initial shock. She said, I woke up, it felt like cold water's running down my throat. And she said, I don't know what it was. I saw a light. I just started walking down the mountain. She gets finally to the doorway of her own family members. And when they open the door, they see it. They know what this punishment is. They won't allow her past the first doorstep. They said, we won't take you in. She's back on the street again. She goes to one more house that's her stepmother's father. And they said, we will let you in, but you need to say the words after us. I am ashamed to a woman's name. I've created shame upon my family. And then you need to repeat the creed. And she said, I was so disoriented. I couldn't remember the words in the right order to say the Muslim creed. I couldn't, get the words out. She said one of the hardest times of her life. 3 days, no one changed her clothes. No one tended to her wounds. Finally, they dumped her out front of a military base. And she stayed there 2 or 3 hours in the hot sun. They were trying to assess the situation. Obviously, we can understand it could look like maybe she was a threat of her own. Maybe there's bombs or something like that. Finally, she was let inside the military base. They cared for her immediate needs. And then they transferred her to a shelter in Kabul. And then that's when Time magazine came in, takes a photo of her, and it ends up on the cover of Time magazine. Diane Sawyer comes to Kabul and does an interview with her inside the shelter. And then they brought her to the United States. So in 2010 is when she's on the cover. She comes to the States. Within about a month, they did a huge Hollywood red carpet event fundraiser for her. I mean, she's meeting, a whole host of stars and political figures. And then about a year and a half later, they began to do the reconstructive surgeries through Walter Reed Hospital. And they did about 33 surgeries on her. And her story is incredible, remarkable. But it, of course, very tough to, as a writer, I'm immersing myself in this story. And it's deep. It's a lot of trauma. And for anyone that's been through trauma, and especially if you have endured some kind of sexual trauma, that kind of thing, you feel it to those parts that are so young. Taking advantage of that innocence when it's robbed and stolen is really tough. And so I would say it's been my favorite and one of the most challenging to write all at the same time. The content has flowed well. But there are days that I finish and I notice I have a headache. I feel nauseous. And I understand that it's also her story registering through me. There's a part that I feel her. I hear parts of my own story. I hear parts of women that have been close to me. Nothing like what she's been through, of course, but to embody a voice of this oppression, it's intense. It's good. It's needed story to come out. But it's not one of those rosy stories you're laughing at the end of the day. It's tough. It's real. And I'm up close and personal with it. But I'm very excited for it to come out soon. And I think it's a necessary story to be told right now.
How do you kind of balance? Because it's something I found myself. And, someone's been through one fucking gruesome ordeal after another. And the challenge for the writer is to tell that story without it being to the point where a reader becomes desensitized to it, right? So how did you was that something that you were kind of conscious of and that you were, because you understand where I'm coming from, right? Like you want to get this whole story out, but at the same time, you're like, I don't want the reader to switch off and be like, like if you're flicking through news about Mexico, what's going on? You're like, 40 bodies here. And then, that's the way our brains operate. So how did you do that?
So for me, let's say we take her story. When she first began to talk, the thing she wanted to tell me most about was her grandmother, who raised 30 children, secluded them in the mountains, and kept them safe. This woman carried a gun with her, and she had beautiful long hair, and she's talking about her and her cousins. They're sleeping under the stars every night. They're little girls. One of them wants to be a doctor. One of them says, I want to, someday travel outside. And so what I want the reader to feel is that we tend to paint someone with one stroke, which is, this is the woman who had this tragedy occur. I want you to see the little girl in her. I want you to read it and think, before these events, when she's 8 years old, there's someone in her that is like me, is like you, is like someone else. And so I wanted the story of the grandmother to come alive, of her running in the mountains. I want you to see the beauty she saw in her country when she was a little girl. I want you to smell that the Ramadan bread and potatoes. The grandmother's waking up at 5 a.m. before the fasting starts, and she's cooking for her. And so if you can see these small pleasures that she feels when she's in the prison, she makes beads, and for the first time, she sells them to someone. They allow people to come in and buy things from the prisoners to make a little money. She makes a few coins, and she buys one teacup. This is her first taste of ever having money of her own, of independence. to make that small moment come alive where you understand the victory she's feeling, for you to feel with her that she got her driver's license. What a thing that is. We don't understand the victory it is. Her teacher, when she's in school, says, every time you do a math problem and you get it right, you slap the Taliban in the face. That's what I want you to think of. And she said, Lauren, I am doing my best with my numbers, because she didn't learn to count until she got to the United States, I mean, this is what we're talking about. And she said, I'm slapping them. I'm slapping them.
Yeah.
The joy on that face. And I've spent time with her in person. We cook together. We laugh together. It's important to me that this woman doesn't come out and she's forever just the girl whose ears and nose were cut off by the Taliban. This woman is victorious. And so my job as a writer is to make you see the little girl that wants to be with her grandmother. I want you to see what she loses during that time of trauma, what was taken from her, and then what she gets back. I want you to feel the victory with her as she becomes whole again and independent again and speaking for herself again. When she's driving, she's educating herself, that you feel it there. And so with her story or other ones I've dealt with, let's say you're talking about a man who's been in the military, I want you to laugh with the boys. I want you to see your brother and your boyfriend and your uncle and your father see more than just what the trauma is, because actually that's why those chapters that are really tough actually hurt more when you see the whole humanity of the character. And it doesn't just become about gruesomeness. It doesn't become about just exploiting trauma. It becomes about really telling a story, the full story, the whole arc of it. So it's important to paint every part of a person's character. And I feel that it's necessary to do them justice in these scenarios, to see more of the whole person there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to read this book because, I've been to Afghanistan, and until we did the Escape from Kabul book and we started talking to civilians, I kind of realized I'd never had a conversation, apart from like people who are in the UK and, because you run into quite a lot of Uber drivers and stuff who come out of there and things. But I'd never spoken to Afghan women before. And, it's a weird one because you've got on one hand, you're like, there's definitely a part of me that's like, look, we were over there to, launder money through the government and all of that. But then you hear stories like this and you're like, well, we were fighting someone that deserved to be fought against. And, it's trying to reconcile those two things. And there's a part of me that wishes, God, I wish we'd stuck around and kept going, even if it was for the wrong reasons. How do you decompress then? How do you work out? You mentioned the CrossFit. How important
I love the
is that to
CrossFit.
you?
Actually, for anything, I believe that oftentimes when there's things mentally going on, I'm not one of these like crazy crystal people or something, but I do believe that the energy that you that you're embodying, that you're feeling, it's contained somewhere, either in the back of the neck and shoulders, or you get a headache or you get something. And so I feel that it's important, and sweating is, to me, one of the most decharging things to do. So I love to CrossFit. I love to lift. I love to box. I love to do Muay Thai. I love to, and actually there were some chapters, and I felt so much anger for the human beings that can brutalize innocent children, especially. I cannot wrap my mind around it. I can understand corruption. I even understand murder. I understand theft. I can understand most vices. But to take the innocence of a child, to objectify a child, to sexualize a child, I get fucking angry, and I felt that rage come up in me. And so I just go to Muay Thai. I'm boxing. My trainer's wondering, what's going on, why I'm really looking at him with some, crazy face. So I feel like that's very, very important. And then there's a certain point in time, if you are a co-author or ghostwriter, you're going to choose to do this kind of work. At a certain point in the day, I have an exercise I do through writing, in which I separate out what is mine and what is not mine as far as stories go. And I say, I am Lauren. This is my story. This is who I am. And this is what belongs to me. And parts of the trauma, I say, this is the story I'm telling. It may sound crazy to someone else, unless you've done this as a day job all the time. Taking 10 minutes to, on paper, write for yourself what is your trauma, these are the parts of the story I identify with and touches on something I've been through. These are the parts that are not belong to me. It's important because I'm deeply empathetic. I deeply embed with someone else, and it's important to create mental boundaries at a certain point in the day where you shut off and you know that was my work, and now I need to be present, in my daily life. But I'm a big believer in exercise. I love good food. I'm a huge foodie. I love to go to restaurants. I love to cook. I love to try new foods. I love to eat, which is why the CrossFit is also good. And so, little.
So where do you put that into your day then? Is it to set you up, or is it do you let all that stuff build up in the day and then it's the release at the end of the day, or a bookend? How would you do it?
Most of my career, I've actually done middle of the day, like noon. I would go to a noon CrossFit class. I would wake up early, and then I could get a good 4 or 5 hours of writing. I go to CrossFit. I release it all. I get a big endorphin high, and I felt that I could start the day over. I didn't eat a lot during the day because when I'm working out that hard, then I lose my appetite for a couple hours. And then the evenings is all, rest and relaxation. Sometimes when that's not doable, I do it later. Some people love to wake up at 5 a.m. and take an ice bath and do 10 steps. I am just not that person. I don't want to wake up with a cold shower. I don't want to be at 5 a.m. at the gym. I like to wake up and have a nice cup of coffee and maybe do a little mental focus or, meditative kind of practice and then get my day started. But I would always be a middle of the day kind of person and then end of the day. How about you? What's your go-to?
It depends what I'm working on. Sometimes if I'm writing my own fiction, so it's different because, I write, I know you're doing fiction too. And if I'm writing my own fiction, I wake up in the morning and I've usually got ideas that I don't know. Maybe they've kind of clicked together. And I'm like toothbrush while I'm having a pee, and then I'm straight on the laptop. Great. And then I'm clicking the kettle behind me, and I'm straight into it. And and then maybe about 4 hours in, I'll stop because I'm starving.
Yeah.
That's what it's like with fiction. I'm get it all out in the morning. When I'm ghostwriting, it's a lot more of a 9-to-5 job where it will be more right, what have I got to do today? Okay. And because the way I do mine is I like to do a phone call, and then I'll so you do a phone call. So let's say the phone call's in the evening, I'll write it up in the morning, or if the phone call's in the morning, I'll write it up in the afternoon. I'll do it when it's kind of fresh.
Same.
So it depends, but I like to try and do exercise twice a day, and it doesn't need to be 2 death sessions a day. It could just be so today I did about midday. I went for a walk for an hour, and I was doing, I'm trying to learn Spanish at the moment, so I'm doing my Spanish while I'm walking.
Why Spanish?
Yeah, I know. It's just fucking really cool.
I thought
language.
You were going to say you're dating a Spanish girl or something. You need to
I mean, I do like Spanish girls. I know, but
more than muy bonito.
No. I mean, it's just. No, so me and my friends, we kind of have a group. Some of my friends are into they're into the toxicas.
Mamacitas, chicas. Yeah.
Well, they're into the toxicas, who are the toxic mamacitas. It's a very niche. It's a very niche brand.
That is an intense experience.
Well, these are guys that like the adrenaline. So, but I love the language, and we went to Colombia last year. I loved it, and one of my mates, Fedi, when he's speaking, a few of my friends speaking, they speak in it. I'm like, that's so cool. I want to be able to join in this conversation. Mm-hmm. Because I'd love to be able to go and live somewhere for a couple of months and not use English. That's kind of like a life goal.
I lived in Costa Rica for 3 months, and when I was living there, I picked up a lot of Spanish. I was, walking to the markets, I was conversing well and doing things, but then I went to Portugal, and then I started picking up Portuguese, and then I noticed I mentioned that almost immediately forgot what I had learned there. So it kind of erases in the mind, but it's great. I mean, I loved it there. In Costa Rica, it was so relaxing. It was one of the best experiences I had. I really enjoyed it so much. I stayed under the Arenal volcano for a while in the jungle, and it is just absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, you had some awesome pictures on your Instagram. You definitely gave me the travel bug. But yeah, but I have the same thing because when I'm struggling because the problem I'm having at the moment is I'm doing this course, on an audio course. but I haven't had the chance to do any conversation. So I'm getting to the point now where like I can look at some Spanish writing and figure out what the gist of the writing is, and I could understand a little bit, but I haven't had the chance to speak it yet. But when I do, I've noticed that I start throwing French in there. Because if I'm missing a word, I'll throw the French in, or sometimes even Welsh. So, so I'm going to Mexico next week for a wedding, but it's not going to be like much of a chance. But I'd love to go out there for like a long period and really just kind of immerse myself in it. But yeah, there's a fitness goals like, so I might maybe do like a walk for an hour. I live in the hills, so it's not like an easy walk, but I'm not, it's not a level 10 death march. And then like, because I see the weights as, well, not legs day. I don't see legs day as a treat, but every other day I see as a treat, and it's something that I can look forward to. So it's like, right, work's done. Great. Now I get to go and do bides and tries, which is most
great.
days.
But you're kind of a bro session guy with a CrossFit, right? Like the buys, tries, and thighs. Yeah. I mean, I live a bro session too. I mean, it's great. It's good. I go back and forth. Sometimes I really enjoy CrossFit, and then sometimes, if you're not mentally prepared for what that like high intensity, can't breathe feeling, then lifting is great. I can listen to music, rest between sets, or an audiobook or something. Are you an audiobook person, by the way, when you're doing these walks? Are you listening to a book to get some reading done?
Podcasts, a lot of podcasts, but also audiobooks. I prefer I like audiobooks for the car.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times when I'm walking, I'm quite often, even if I've got a podcast going on, a lot of the times I'm zoning out and I'm thinking about work or other things. Whereas like when I listen to an audiobook, I actually want to be, I was listening to one today about gun trafficking in Mexico, and I had it on in the house while I was doing some jobs because, I was doing some paperwork, and my doing paperwork is look at the envelope, rip it up, throw it in the bin. So I could listen to an audiobook. I could listen to an audiobook at the same time as doing it. But I do love audiobooks. But I think a lot of it is down to just the fact, like, I love reading a book.
Me too.
But there's only so much your eyes can spend looking at a fucking, like, not necessarily a screen, but just looking at words all day.
Yeah.
So if you've been doing 5 or 6 hours of writing or editing or whatever, I don't want to look at words at the end of the day. So I've started to watch a lot more TV than I used to.
Yeah, it's understandable. Definitely understandable. Yeah, I do some of both. I like to have 2 to 3 books I read simultaneously all the time, but for different categories. They're different tabs in my mind, so I don't mind having several streams open. I have an audiobook going, and if I need to get ready in the morning, or I'm doing, my girl stuff in the morning, I am always listening to an audiobook, and it allows me to, because certain things I'm reading for content, I just need to know what this writer is saying, or I need to read these 3 books because the person I'm working with says these are the books that they like and they want their book to sound like. So I just need a quick backdrop for it. And so I'm doing that. But some books, if I'm pleasure reading, I really want to feel a page. I want to see the words. I want to, put myself into it. So what do you pleasure read? Are you a fiction guy, or what's your?
Yeah, I really like private detective books. I don't really like cop books so much, but I love like Raymond Chandler books, that kind of thing. But I hardly read any these days because there's that thing of me when I'm reading, I'm like, unless it's so like, I've just read all like the Philip Kerr books and I couldn't stop reading them. I was just bought one and read one. I was like, just bought the rest. Got no work done for like 2 weeks because I was just binge reading his books. But generally speaking, if I'm reading fiction, it's not really grabbing me. I'm like, why am I reading when I could be writing?
I understand. I feel that too.
There's that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing as well is I love physical copies for fiction.
Mm-hmm.
But also if I'm researching a book, like you're saying, like, you're doing the research, I don't tend to do audiobooks for that. For some reason then I'm like, okay, now it's work. It's got to be books. Plus I love buying books. Who doesn't love buying books?
It's great to buy books. And some books I skim read, to be honest. I can speed read. I don't need to catch every single word. I need to get the basics of it. And so I can read at a different speed. But if I'm pleasure reading or if I'm reading fiction, then I want every single word. If you have an audiobook, you need to listen to every single word pronounced at a slow pace. I don't know if you do this, but some books I'll pick up just to speed read someone's. I'm really on the full journey and the full experience of it. But I go through seasons. Sometimes I'm reading a ton, and then sometimes it's 2-3 months, and I'm thinking like, damn it, you're a writer, and you're not reading, a full-length book this month, and I really feel like an imposter.
Well, it's one of the annoying things about publishing is they have their rules like, okay, this genre's got to be this amount of words, and this genre's got to be that. There's loads of non-fiction words which you could write. It could be 20,000 words, and you'd get all the gold that you need. But they've got this idea that, well, it's got to be 70, 80,000 words. And like you said, then you're like, you don't need that. But once you understand how books are structured and stuff, you can. Like you don't miss anything by skim reading. It's because you're not passing anything, but you can just where the filler is, where it's not, and you can just skim. You just kind of skim over it.
Especially if you're doing a development book or a self-help or some secrets of business or marketing. This kind of one, if you know where to look, you understand where the pockets are. That is the writer giving away some fresh content, and then the filler story, the success story to this, you get the algorithm and you can learn that, get it fairly quickly. So
I've got a final question then.
Yes.
If you could, in all the history, and it doesn't matter if they've had the book, but in all the history, if you could have one person that you could sit down and ghostwrite their story, who would it be?
That's a tough question.
Okay, you can have a couple of people. Make it easier.
Okay. You're gonna think this is maybe crazy of me, but if I knew that I myself was physically safe or secure, I want to know what was in Hitler's mind to become in one lifetime what that man became. Because when I'm looking at history and I'm studying this person, it's not just insanity we're talking. It's not just brutality. This is someone with a really different ideology. This is someone who is actually enacting some version of morality that their mind began to believe in something else, something quite different. I'm fascinated by this. I want to psychologically break that mind down. For one person, that human is one of the strangest and most fascinating people. If you could really get them to begin with I want to know what happened between, 3 years old and death. Motivations. I have so many questions because we see what we see from the outside, but I mean, the science, the ideology for me is really fascinating. So it's not a hero necessarily, but for me, someone who's very interesting historical figure. So that one fascinates me quite a bit.
He might not be someone that you end up friends with at the end of the project.
No, I don't think so. I don't think I'm gonna call up and say, "Hey, let's do dinner." But I mean, I don't know. Maybe me and Hitler. No, I don't see it, but I find that person to be quite fascinating. So I would say that one would be very interesting. And I like heroes, but I'm still fascinated a little bit by the demented mind. That one gets me a little bit more. How about you?
Well, I think we all are, because I mean, just look at how popular serial killer documentaries are.
Yes.
Everything like that. I mean, you don't get documentaries about, let's say, a cop who jumped in a river to save someone from drowning. Like, no one's making a documentary about that, but some guy that goes around chopping people into little pieces is like, sign me up. I want to watch that.
What is it about that macabre side of us that is so fascinated by it?
I think it's because there's a part of us, if we're honest, like, there's quite a lot of times where I think I'd like to chop that person up and put them in a suitcase. particularly when I get a letter from the tax man. I'm thinking, like, I'm looking at my suitcases, like, how many of them could I get in here? But no, I think it's just like, I read a book recently. It was Serial Killers of Mexico, and I bought this book, and I actually felt really guilty about buying it for a while, because I'm like, why did I buy this book about people's worst days?
Yeah.
But then I thought, I thought, give it a try, give it a chapter. And because again, it was one of those ones where, and it was actually really well done.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and then what we were talking about earlier, and this is something that's kind of fascinating, because it was like almost every one of these serial killers began their life being abused as a child.
Yeah.
Almost every one. But then there's that part of you that can kind of understand and go, well, okay, this person was a victim at one point in their life.
Yeah.
But then a lot of people have been abused as children and don't end up as murderers.
Don't end up, yeah.
So then you're like, well, what is it? Well, like, was it something that they're born with and then the set of circumstances and then those two things combined? or what was it? Because if everyone that was abused as a child goes on to be a murderer, then like people will be getting murdered left, right, and center all over the place. Unfortunately,
Exactly. Yeah.
So it was a well done book. I have to say it gave good context. It didn't glorify anything. It didn't go over the top on details or anything. I thought it was well done. I would recommend it. But yeah, I mean, and then it's the same thing with kind of soldiering. Is like I'm fascinated with this idea of wanting to go out and kill other human beings.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I go back and forth on this. I'm like, is this programming or is this innate? Or is it both?
Very good question. Yeah. And I think maybe it's got to be a mixture of something. This is something, and my fiction book isn't out, but my fiction book is exploring psychology, and the opening part of it talks about germination. There's a point in which you planted a seed in the ground and then something happens and germination takes place and it springs to life. It becomes visible to the outside world. And I think it can be a sense that all of us have things lie dormant within us that if put in the right context, and if we make a certain set of choices, it germinates. It comes to life. Mm-hmm. It becomes visible. It comes out of us. But it gets into some very interesting questions. Like if the situation environment is right, is anyone capable of anything? Or do some people have a line that they won't cross? I mean, these are all things, we say, well, I would never kill, but have you been in the right context and situation and get into that mindset? So I'm quite fascinated by these questions. I think this part of human psychology is very interesting. And I can't say that I have a black and white answer for it as of yet.
But I look at the John Wick movies and the popularity. Mm-hmm. Because I think everyone out there thinks like, yeah, if someone killed my dog and I was a hitman, I'd love to go on a rampage and kill everyone who killed my dog.
Yeah.
And that's a dog, but I think there's something that connects in that with people. They're like, yeah, you fuck with my dog, I'll murder you. And like, yeah, I do think we probably a lot of people probably there's this desire for vengeance in us. I mean, so many movies are based around it.
Yep.
So I do think it's just something within us. So you got a lot of books. So where can people find you online? And also, when's BB's book coming out? Because I really want to read that one.
Yeah. So right now we're just in the process of working out the publishing aspects of this. I mean, we're planning to translate it into about 5 to 7 languages. It's going to go all over the world. I don't know if you caught it, but about maybe 4 weeks ago, when I was in the United States, Angelina Jolie just did an interview with Bibi Aisha. It's a wonderful interview. It just came out on Time Magazine. And so since then, there's been a lot of media coverage on this story. I think there's a lot of interest, especially after the U.S. and there's been the withdrawal. There's been the aftermath, things happening in Afghanistan. There's been Taliban coming in greater capacity. There's a lot of necessary conversations that need to go down about what the past was and where we are today. And she tells a different side of the story. It's not just about the military involvement. She's really giving us a peek behind the curtain into that. So I'm excited about that. My guess is, if publishing goes very smoothly, we're looking at the next, maybe 3 to 4 months. It could be up to 5 to 6, depending on how long that publishing part takes. And we're very excited about that. Actually, she and I will be coming to the UK. We're probably going to do a book launch in the UK as well as the United States and maybe Germany. So I'm maybe 5 to 6 months on that one. The one for Saddam Hussein's book, the declassified story of his private pilot, that just came out about a month ago. So as of right now, you can look me up, laurenungeldi.com. You can also go on Instagram. I'm not a Facebook person and I'm not a TikToker. I don't have any of these kind of things. I maybe go on LinkedIn to put on something, but really Instagram is where I put the majority of my things. And it's the same, Lauren Ungeldi. You can look me up there and I'm posting all, book release stuff and the timeline on that when it's coming. Everything keeps you pretty up to date where that's concerned. Your book just came in. I noticed, by the way, I ordered a copy and I just saw it got delivered to Texas. And so when I'm there in 3, it's in Texas, by the way. So I'm going to, when I go there, I will get it and be able to order it. I'm excited to dive into it.
Thank you. Well, thanks for your time, mate. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah,
And let us know when the book
sure.
comes out. I'll also put links down to all your stuff down in the show notes people can click on. But yeah, let us know when you're in the UK as well, because BBC sounds like an amazing person.
Yeah.
And all the best with that book and all the others. And yeah, we'll catch you soon. Thanks for your time today.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And listeners, we'll catch you next time. And we love you. Bye.